Friends, classmates, guests, I want to thank you all for taking your time to come listen to this speech today. It's a great honor for me to speak to you. Today I intend to present you with some interesting facts about the New Testament that you may not be aware of. Specifically how it was formed, the way the world has made one of the men who put it together a legend that's lasted until today. In today's church, most Christians simply accept the New Testament for what it says without ever thinking about how it came together. The New Testament is a collection of letters that were written by one of the apostles or by someone who is very close to one of the apostles. In the early 3rd century, a council was held that included over 300 bishops, saints, and preachers. Emperor Constantine called this council together at Nicaea to determine the deity of Christ and to decide which letters would be used for the new canon, which is the New Testament. This council was held just after the great persecution of the Christians. Very few of the men at that council are remembered today. However, there was one man there that is remembered by nearly every person in the world today. He has become associated with the largest holiday that we all celebrate. However, very few people really know who he is. In a book written by Joe Wheeler, we learn that this man was born at Patara in Lycia, a province of Asia Minor. Lycia and Myra are both cities that the Apostle Paul visited in his missionary journeys, and both of these cities were converted to Christianity. The Lycians were firm believers in education, so this man was most likely well versed in the Greeks' teachings of the day. Both his parents died due to a plague that swept across Europe when he was very young. And he was taken in by his uncle, who happened to be the senior priest of Myra. There he studied under his uncle. He immersed himself in the Didache and announced his desire to be in the ministry. The Didache is also known as the way of life. It's based on the teachings of Jesus Christ that we find in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40. He became known as the boy bishop, or the young bishop, since he was the youngest person to have ever been given the title of bishop that we know of. Obeying Jesus' words to sell what you own and give the money to the poor, he used his whole inheritance to assist the needy, the sick, and the suffering. He dedicated his life to serving God and was made bishop of Myra while still a young man. He became known throughout the land for his generosity to those in need, his love for the children, and his concern for sailors and ships. His most well-known charitable act comes from a story that is documented on the Catholic Online website. This story says that after he became bishop, he learned that a man in his congregation who lived in Patara had lost all that he owned. This man had 3 daughters that were about to become of age to marry, but he had no dowry to give them, and therefore he couldn't give them away in marriage. Because of his poverty, he decided to sell his daughters into prostitution when they became of age. When this bishop of Myra heard about this, he decided to do something about it. In the darkness of night, wearing a cloak and a hood, he made his way to the man's house the night before his oldest daughter's birthday. He threw in a bag of gold through the window, which gave the man enough money to give his daughter a dowry. And she was soon married. The bishop did the same thing for the other 2 daughters as they became of age. The father of the daughters was watching for the stranger on the night before his 3rd daughter's birthday. When he saw this hooded man coming, he realized that it was the bishop. And he ran up to him, overwhelmed him with gratitude and thankfulness. The bishop's reputation for generosity and kindness gave rise to legends of miracles that he performed for the poor and the unhappy. One such story is one where he stopped an execution of 3 boys who were falsely accused. Many other stories were also told that we don't have time to go into right now. Devotion to him became widespread, and many of the churches throughout Europe were dedicated to him. We learn in the Encyclopedia of World Religions that most of the early records about this bishop have been destroyed or lost over the years. But what we do know is that despite the persecutions, imprisonment, and overall barbaric acts against all the Christians of the time, this Bishop of Myra held to the standards that Christ set for us. It's been a long journey from the 3rd century bishop who had a hand in the creation of the New Testament to the legend that the world sees today. His devotion to God, his extraordinary kindness and generosity towards those in need, became the grounds for the image we portray him as instead of the legend that we have created of him. However, there is a growing movement within the United States of America to help restore the original image of this Bishop of Myra. He was a lover of the poor. He was a patron saint to the children. He lived his life as an example of how all Christians should live. He had a part in the creation of the New Testament that we use today. As a bishop, he put Jesus Christ in the center of his life and was an example that many people today are just beginning to embrace. He kept the traditions of Christ's life and his birth. Over 400 European churches are still dedicated to him, as well as thousands more across the world. His image, this image, is the one that is most used by Catholic churches, as well as statues that are made of him in his honor. He died and was buried in his episcopal city of Myra. This Bishop of Myra's name is St. Nicholas, otherwise known today as Santa Claus. So this Christmas, remember him for the man he was, and not the fat man in the red suit that this materialistic world has made him out to be. And as Paul Harvey would say, now that's the rest of the story. Thank you for coming.